Hello, and thank you for listening. My name is Luke Mardigian, and you are listening to Be Insured, where we talk about business, leadership, and insurance. That way, on your worst day, when you need it the most, you will be insured. I hope you're all staying healthy, and as you may have guessed, COVID-19 kept us away from the studio last month, but I'm excited that you're going to be able to hear a show that is amazing that we've had planned for quite some time. So let's dive in. You know, it's one thing to know what you do, and it's another thing to truly understand why you do it. Many of you may have been told that you need to define your why or start with why as a company or as a person. And maybe you struggle to understand how that can make you more successful, why it's important in your process. But that may be the first one to tell you that knowing the purpose behind your work is one of the most powerful motivators there is, not just for you, but also for the people who you serve. And when I told my producer I wanted to do a show on defining your why, I immediately knew the perfect person to bring on the show to discuss the topic with you, and that's Jerome Vierling. Jerome, thanks so much for being on the show.
Hey, thank you. Come on.
So can you introduce yourself and tell us who you are and what you do?
Hey, my name's Jerome, and I am a father. I'm a husband. We got 5 kids under 10. I'm an inner city pastor. I also make hip hop music, but I'm just a normal person, just like everybody else. And I'm drinking from a fire hose most days on quarantine at home, you know?
Yeah, especially with 5 kids, dude. Like with my 2, it's been intense. The brawls and fighting and not sharing and all the fun stuff. So I can imagine what 5 kids is like. So, you know, Jerome, we were talking off air that so many times when I have conversations with agents or business owners about why they're in business, they go right to this very selfish, kind of high level platitude of I want to help people, or I want to make a good living, or I want to provide for my family. But what does it mean to you to define your why?
Yeah, we've all heard at this point, the textbook, you know, put the mission statement on the wall and get the plaque, but does your heart pump through your chest? And for me, you know, you can have the head engaged, your mind, you can have your hands doing stuff, but if your heart ain't in it, it don't matter. So for me personally, how I think of the why is I think of my story first and how I felt throughout my life. We've kind of summed it up with, we want people to feel loved. We want people to know that they belong. We want people to know that they have purpose. And then if I continue that story backwards, I'm looking at, hey, there was a summer a few years ago where there was 9 shootings in 6 days in Lansing. And then that kind of headline is ripping through my chest like, whoa, we got to do something about this. Why? Because people must not feel loved. They must not feel like they belong, and they must not feel like they got purpose. So me, I've had times in my life, I didn't feel loved. I didn't feel like I belonged. I didn't feel like I had purpose. So we're not talking how, we're not talking what, we're just talking good old fashioned, like, does your heart beat through your chest for people? So it kind of summed up for me, the why is like, I'm the one for the one. And I remember being forgotten. I remember getting in trouble. I remember, you know, when, you know, your family divorces or whatever, each one of our stories we carry. And I think that transcends business, that transcends culture, methodology. We just cut right to the core of it, right? So that when I think why, that's how I'm thinking. I'm thinking my story. I'm thinking somebody else's story. I'm thinking getting right in the guts in it, you know, the trench, and just, hey, where's the junk? Where's the mess? Let's pull up the hood, right?
Yeah. What I've found to be very true is anyone who actually understands their why only understands it because they understand their identity. And that what you're talking about on the flip side is kind of the negative, where I didn't feel like I belonged. Well, so many times the opposite of what you felt in a negative or destructive context is actually who you are.
Come on.
Like you didn't feel like you belonged because you belong. And you're designed and created to make other people belong. You know, like for me, 9 years as a cop, right? 5 years investigating insurance fraud. Like protection and provision, that's my heartbeat, right? Like that's that's a father's heart. So it was just the way it's expressing itself because I myself didn't maybe at times feel protected or provided for. And it's so many people view that as a negative and get so stuck in that instead of unleashing that and actually flowing and letting that become a part of why they're in business or why they're a pastor or why they're a dad. So why should business owners care about defining their why? And, you know, how come that's become so important in our 2020 world?
Man, I think it's obvious more than ever. Does a why trickle through an organization. I think the why is felt. It can't even be taught. It's caught. I think it's exactly what you're talking about. The superpower is found in us going back to the pain. It's found in us, the things we felt the lack, and now we feel, okay, well, that's a superpower. And for me, businesses and coming from the marketplace and being a consumer, I can tell if people give a rip. Like, everyone's got a mission statement, but you don't feel it. So something isn't contagious through an organization. And at the end of the day, like, I think we could boil it down to, we actually care about the end user or the consumer in a way that we want to eliminate all steps for them so that we can really live our businesses why. Because it's not happening.
Right.
It doesn't matter where I go. That's why people stand out when they do it.
Yes. Well, I think this pandemic, a lot of people are seeing the companies that are being disingenuine. They're putting out advertising talking about what they're doing for businesses. In the grand scheme of things, it's a drop in the bucket. It's the appearance of generosity without being generous, right? And you can feel it. Versus companies like honestly, even the company, our parent company, Michigan Farm Bureau, where we're literally just handing checks to restaurants. And we're a one-state operation. $5 million is a lot of money for us. And then you have companies that are literally like $8 billion companies, and they're cutting $8 million checks. And to me, that's the greatest expression of whether you actually are bought into helping people, or whatever your mission statement is or not, right? Like, when it comes down to it and everything's on the line, how much are you willing to give back to those people who've been supporting you for so long?
That's it. Is it self-preservation? Or are we going to sacrifice for the greater good of whatever our sector is? And I think that's kudos to exactly how you guys are doing it.
Yeah, I think it's great. So I'd love to hear more about your experience. What did it look like for you to really sit down and define your why for City Life Lansing?
Yeah, I get asked this is, how do I start a dream and how do I make this happen? And give me the 5 steps to success. And it's like, if everybody wants to know what it is, a lot of grueling time alone, a lot of wrestling alone, a lot of, I've heard it said that if you can learn how to be alone with yourself, you've mastered life. Because it's very hard to be alone and confront and be vulnerable. And so for City Life, it's just an extension of exactly like you said, going down deep into my own personal story and saying, hey, do I believe in the city? Do I believe in life? And do I need to do something big to feel validated? And it's like, no, I believe I'm seen all the time by God. And I know when I do anything for the one, he sees that too. So if I can come from a place of authenticity, so for us was seeing, hey, the city doesn't need another church. But what we felt it did need was people that were going after those that were in the gap or marginalized. So out of that birth City Life's mission statement, which is loving the city one life at a time. But that comes from, again, me knowing that I'm loved, knowing that the city is futuristic in nature. We should be creative. It involves all businesses, every type of industry. And then the one defines that singular, that success. And then at a time reminds us, man, we've only been given so much of a time. So that mission statement for us is a class. I mean, that we could teach. That applies to any season. Yeah. So for City Life, then we started thinking that build the methodology in that. Let's have a Sunday experience. Let's have groups for people to connect. And let's do Love the City initiatives, primarily focusing on inner city schools, because that's where there was just a gap. Not like, hey, look at us, we're here to help, but more like we're with. And there's greatness where there is forgotten or what is seen as kind of not ideal, so to speak. You know what I mean? So that's where I see it.
Well, I think a lot of people listening probably go, well, yeah, of course the church wants to love one person at a time, but it's actually what you're saying is incredibly counter to where church culture has been for the past 20 years and where a lot of people have felt themselves marginalized because of the mega church feel of not never really being seen or heard, but still being a part of the group. And instead, you're like, what I've seen in City Life, and I applaud you guys, is you're actually doing what everybody says they should be doing. when you guys, when your team was going into Eastern High School, which no longer exists, no, it's moved now, right, to the old Pat Gill, when you're going into an inner city high school and you're volunteering not to preach, but to help kids with their math homework, it doesn't get more practical on loving the one, because literally, like, helping my kids at home, I can only help one kid at a time. Like, you can't tutor 18 kids at the same time. You can only love the one. And that's so counterintuitive to how society is working right now as far as scale up. How big can you get? How can you replicate your systems, which are all healthy things, particularly in business. But we often do it at the cost of that one client who just gets left behind. It's like, well, yeah, they just don't fit in our system, so we're just gonna move on. And I think that you said something really important, which was, so I'd like you to expound on that. Once you got that why cemented, then it was just a matter of what tactics are in line with that. So what process did you take your organization, once you figured out your why, what process did you take the organization through to figure out what that actually looks like in tactics and strategies? And here's why I asked that. So many businesses start with tactics and strategies, right? You sold copy machines for forever. It was like tactics and strategies all day. Well, all you got to do is say this and you'll get them to close. And all you got to do is do this and you'll get in the door. And then you get to a decision maker and tactic strategies. You start with why and then move to tactics and strategies. So explain that process.
Yeah, I think we can't guarantee ourselves success, and we can't guarantee ourselves bottom line increase. And to your point, if we're just building on how we're going to make money, or here's what we're going to do, or now we're in the false motive land, how do we keep our motives pure? And so City Life, then we had to get back to, okay, what would be the basics to what we do? Do I even need to say that we're a church? No. If I was standing up, you'd know I was 5'6". You would just tell that. Like, if you see me, you're like, oh, he's a white kid. Like, you can just see that, right?
Yeah.
You should be able to just see who I am or what I do or represent. So we're like, all right, well, we don't even need to use the word church. And then it was like, well, what day do we want to connect? Where do we want to connect? We had the opportunity to be in a church building. We were like, dude, like, church is a swear word for people. Yeah. Last thing when I met Jesus, Jesus is like, I fell in love with him, and then I fell in love with his family. His weird family. You get this weird cousin, you get all these people you didn't even know you had. But it's okay. We all got that, right? Yeah. So then we had to get down to the basics and plan, and now we're having to be agile and audible. Here we are on the fly. Everything's changed, right? The methods have changed radically. So hopefully our message hasn't. So we came down to some core things was, all right, we're going to meet. How and where? Let's meet in a community center. That's awesome. Let's meet in a school like that. This is, eliminate barriers. Yep. And then let's just make it down to earth. Let's build it grassroots. To your point, let's be in the schools, and let's not even promote a brand, because kind of how we want to do it. Money will follow vision. So success will follow vision. So if our vision is the one, let's put our money where our mouth is. Let's just go volunteer. And I remember talking to the Eastern principal, hey, we're just here to help with grades and testing. And she looks at me and was like, she laughed. It was like, are you serious? I was like, yeah, we're trying to bring like people from all over the nation just to help you. She goes, I don't know. But anyways, that developed a friendship later. And she would go on and tell me, like, she didn't believe me at first.
Yeah.
But I thought that was hilarious.
Well, I think so many, to that point, so many organizations have promised so much and delivered so little, all in the name of profit or publicity, rather than simply to help. Even with like I called restaurant owners. I got $4,000 check for you, no strings attached. It's like buying a $4,000 gift card from you that may or may not be redeemed by anyone. And people were going, can I call you back? Can I think about it? I don't know. What's the catch? It's just so difficult in today's world to believe that people are genuinely looking out for you. And the only way to prove it is to your point, to do it, right? You just have to do it.
Yeah, I think you're nailing it, man. And I think a point someone's got to hear it, listen to this. It's harder the bigger you get to stay true to why you started, right? And so that's where it takes calibration sessions, because now we're bigger. People are that business person you call. I got a $4,000 check for you, no strings attached. They're busy.
Yep.
So we're all, so the work gets exponential. And how do we stay true to our convictions? That requires touch points and calibration sessions, just like that wrestling of how we started. here I am having to get myself back in check. Like, you know what? That's fluff. That's whack. What are we doing here? This is stupid. That's a sacred cow. Like, that ain't even helping people, you know?
Yeah.
And you got to be honest with yourself. And that is hard, man.
It is. It's hard to kill the things to cut the fat, right? And you hear about that stuff in government all the time. Of, why are you passing this bill and adding this fluff in and this pork into this bill? It's because it's hard. Like, you actually have to be honest. You have to have outside perspectives on it, and you have to be vulnerable enough to let the people you serve tell you what you're doing and not doing correctly. So, Jerome, if there's one thing that you wanted people to walk away from this episode with, what would it be?
Greatness is inside of you. People aren't looking for a copy. They're looking for an original. So just be yourself in any business you're in. And I think you can truly do that. And that's what the world needs. An unleashed, to use that word, I like that you said that earlier, an unleashed version of you.
Yep, the world is waiting for them. They're just hiding, right? They already created for greatness. Well, Jerome, how can people connect with you in City Life?
Hey, Jerome Vierling, Vierling. Find me on any of the socials, and citylifelansing.com. We got some resources on there for people going through the season. We got a early morning spiritual health kit, starting your day out 10 minutes, starting it out well, and that affects the whole trajectory of the day.
I love it. Jerome, thanks so much for being on the show. Be sure to connect with us on Facebook and Instagram at the Mardigian Agency. Thanks, and we'll see you next time on Be Insured.